We are back. A's baseball, past, present, and future. I'm Ralph Tyko of the Comfortably Zoned Radio Network, and it's my pleasure to co-host this marvelous show with Nancy Finley. She's here today. How are you, darling?
Great. Thank you for having me.
Well, as it were, huh?
Really
Morgan,
fun.
Morgan is fine, I trust.
Oh, yes. Oh,
Good.
yes.
I hope he comes back soon. He gave us a terrific show a few weeks ago on Mike Andrews.
Oh, he'll be back anytime you want him, he'll be back.
Beautiful. Let's pick a topic down the line that would interest his legal mind.
Yes, like maybe
does that wear off on you in your day-to-day married stuff? You know,
actually, no, it doesn't. It's
okay.
Morgan is usually researching for a book he's writing. He writes law books and he updates them. So that's but it's fun for him.
Good. And baseball still remains fun for you all these years after Charlie sold the team to the Hosses.
Yes.
How do you do that as a fan? Tell me what your fandom is like.
No, I've wondered. I've thought. I've asked myself if I'm a fan or a different. I guess it would be a fan, but I was born into it, so it's more like a family. More like I keep up with it just to see how it changes and what decisions they've made, because I'm so familiar with the front office and the clubhouse and each department. So it's just it interests me to keep up with it, but I don't just read the articles for the latest stats or standings. So I see it differently, and I've asked myself.
Okay, do you listen? Are you a radio or a television fan? Do you listen
It depends
more
on if it's on the radio
more?
in the car, then I'm there. But usually it's TV.
Well, speaking of announcers, and I kind of set it up for this, Bill King, the late Bill King, was inducted this past weekend into the Hall of Fame. His great advocate, who Ken Korak, who's a friend of the show, has been on the show a number of times, talking about the book he wrote on Bill King, talking about Ken and I's acquaintanceship from way back when Ken was doing baseball in the California League up in Rohnert Park, and I was the Tops representative back in those days.
Really?
And Ken and I got to know each other a little bit back then, and all these years later we renewed acquaintanceship. He wrote a terrific book about Bill King. Holy Toledo, yes, absolutely, which was Bill's favorite expression, not just in announcing baseball, which he finally, after all these years, got credit for. Sadly, he's not around to see it. Ken's book helped promote that, and he's been fervorish about getting Bill into the Hall. We're going to have him back very soon to congratulate him. And it's really cool to have a man whose baseball was his third best. This is my opinion, and others share it, but it's not a right or wrong. I think baseball was Bill King's third best sport as an announcer.
third?
He
What was
was
the
a
first?
marvelous basketball and football announcer,
Oh.
a marvelous baseball. Now, I'm not taking anything away
Mm-hmm.
from his baseball skills to say this. Just the pace of the game is a little, I found it to be just a little slow for Bill, who was, again, meticulous about stats, about keeping a gigantic book of everything A's baseball, their opponents, who they played. This is before the computer age of calling stuff up so readily. Let me ask you this, as I babble, Nancy.
Oh no, please.
How big a part did the computer play in your writing your terrific book, Finley Ball, by Nancy Finley?
You mean using it to write or using it to research?
Yeah, not just using it as a tool to write, but I mean to research.
Oh, well, what I did something. This was just my own discipline. I used what I found in Dad's files, hard copy, and
right.
what
Now, Dad being Carl, let's make
Carl
it clear to people. I got a few messages that they were confused because they were. Carl Finley was Charlie Finley's brother, in a sense. He was his cousin.
Yes, but they lived like brothers. Their dads were very, very close. I will say Charlie was very close to my grandfather. They talked all the time. They had the same personalities. So, yes.
Right, and obviously Charlie was your uncle.
He called himself Uncle Charlie to me.
Called himself uncle. Called himself. That was like my Uncle Boris was my mother's cousin, but he was my uncle. If you that type of thing. Sam too was my uncle. I might add.
Okay.
But that's a people. A lot of A's fans don't care about Sam and Boris. I've come to find.
I had two adults who were in my life, especially my teenage years coming up. Two adults, Charlie and Dad, who really were my role models. I didn't have my mother.
Well, was your mom a role model in any way?
No,
was there anything
not really
that you got from her that you carry on, that you pass on to your children?
Probably making sure that there aren't any dishes in the sink once dinner is over. I have to say that because that's all I can really think about. She was military. She was older than Dad, had been an Army lieutenant nurse in World War II, and meticulous. She was a nurse. You had to bounce the coin off the sheet when you made the bed, type of thing. And so I look at how I don't want to have things around like dishes or anything kept in the sink, and I think, oh my gosh, that's Mom. But besides that, no, because after the divorce, she became very religious, and I couldn't do things like even the TV was gone, the phone was gone. Yes. So no.
What was that replaced with in a highly orthodox religious setting?
The Bible.
I might ask. Was it replaced by books about religion?
Bible.
Was it
Bible?
The Bible. Okay.
Mm-hmm. And she was extremely bright. Her IQ was around 150. She used to do the crossword puzzles every morning. When before this, when they took the paper, she and Dad they liked ancient Greek, Egypt. They took Latin in college.
Okay.
So they had a lot. Yeah.
So it seems to me that she passed her military training, upbringing, down to you in form of your disciplined writing and your discipline, the way you wrote.
I wondered about that. Now, she can write pages and pages going on and on with a play on words, whereas Dad used to write what it is, a summary. And she used to say, I wrote like Dad, getting to the point. So,
right.
But I think that my grammar comes from both of them. They never swore. They never used profanity. This was before her religion. They just didn't. And thinking back on it, they didn't. They could
different
have
times, and we use it almost as a crutch for not being able to put words together sometimes.
That's what she used to say. It was when you couldn't think of a word to use instead, and she looked down at that. So, yes. So I think, and then players and staff were not allowed to swear around Finley kids. So that's another reason. Oh my gosh. After the divorce, I saw a word written on a sidewalk in Dallas starting with F. It wasn't Finley either. And I didn't know what it was. And Mom took the time to tell me biologically what it was. But that just shows how protected we were.
Yeah, well, I'm drawn back to when my father's business acquaintance, Mr. Fuchs, would call and ask for my father, and I was a kid. And my father was very much like your mother. Cursing was just out of the question. The F word. You'd have to, if you slipped on it, you'd have to say something like, "Oh, Dad, get it. Just forget it." You try to blow it by him, and oftentimes it would work, and oftentimes you'd get my arse kicked.
Yes.
But that's language. Do you miss, after the book is completed, is there a real come down?
There hasn't been a come down because there's more set aside. The book is just a portion of what I did. There's the other half that was set aside because lack of room, and then there's even more that I remember that I set in another section to be put in a later book.
Okay. So this is basically a work in progress. This is the first step in a work in progress.
Now, how I wrote
trilogy
I'm not very good technically, so what I did is I would send an email to Morgan of my memories, and I did that over and over, and in the subject I would put the approximate time period. So that's really how. So the computer helped in that way, but I didn't really use it for researching because I was very disciplined that way. I didn't want I thought if I have to ask someone how something happened, then I don't want to go there because this is from me. This is from what Dad experienced, Charlie, and me. So I didn't want to depend on people, except for when I'm real little, then I'll go back and talk to people in Kansas City who had big roles. But I didn't want to write the book that way because that's what all the other books have been. They haven't known the people, they weren't there, and I wanted to make sure that mine came from what I knew.
Okay, well, let's go back to what we talked about last week, and
Yes, we left off in Kansas City. I think early 60s.
Okay, you or we
Poison pen.
didn't get to the part where we just touched on the part where Oakland came a-courting.
Oh, yes, and called very often to say we're here, we have a place, because they would see the articles in the paper where Charlie would say, I'm going to move if they don't treat me right. That our articles appeared in Alaska. I've seen what
Right.
I don't know why, but every little comment. So yes, they would call to remind us they're here.
Okay, and do you remember who it was that made these approaches initially?
I remember the name.
On Oakland's behalf?
It was several of the people on the Coliseum board, and one name that comes to mind is Vukasian.
Okay, Vukasian.
Thank you.
Yes, if I'm not mistaken, he ran for governor at one time, or tried to run for governor, but very heavy-duty political left-winger, I might add, Democrat, if memory serves. And he was one that approached, by this time, basically, the way I look at it, your dad was the bread and butter of it. Charlie was the whipped cream.
Yes.
Is that?
Oh, yes.
Especially when it came to dealing with the big stuff.
Yes.
Does that describe it well?
Charlie had to have a dad. He had to have a partner, but Dad also had to have Charlie. So it was what do you call it, simpatico? I guess they had to have each other.
How did Dad need Charlie? I could certainly understand how Charlie needed your dad.
Well, I saw that in 1981. Even though the team had just been sold, we made it to the playoffs, and that caught all of us by surprise because we were really not popular in the late 70s with the press, and no one knew we were rebuilding.
Right.
So I think hardcore fans would have picked up on that. But we were, and when the lawsuit occurred in 79, Dad was the one served at the Coliseum. It was thrown out a few months later by the court. It was a federal court filing, which was odd because that's more expensive. But Dad worried, and Dad told Charlie it's time to sell because he thought that they couldn't overcome the hatred, that suit was meant to just get us out. And so, and Charlie didn't see what Dad was seeing. He depended on Dad to tell him how the area was, the atmosphere was here. So Dad approached his friend Cornell Meyer with Kaiser, who knew of the Haas family, so they sell the team. And then we make it to the playoffs with our roster from 78, 79. So I remember how fun it was to be part of that, but yet at the same time, Charlie's not there. Dad's there. And and Dad didn't have Dad wasn't going to go down and tell Billy Martin what to do. Dad was in the background. Dad had helped scout and rebuild that team, but Charlie was needed, and I could see where he was needed. I felt like going down, taking his place, and telling Billy, no, don't use that player right now. I really did.
He would have responded beautifully.
Oh yeah,
Nancy.
And
you don't have your memory is intact along those lines. He would have sat you down, put an A's cap on your head, said, "Thank you very much for the advice, Nancy."
yes, yes.
So thrilled you came down.
Yes, I mean, when the Haas family, when they bought the team, they figured that they were going to start from scratch and get this, try their hand at their own style, and here we make it to the playoffs, 81.
Right.
So
wow. Well, you know what stands out in my mind? Maybe you have memories of this. The A's pitching staff and all of their complete games and how many innings those 4 or 5 guys, Marty Keough, Blue Moon Odom, I think was one of them, Kingman. It was amazing, and how the reason I'm saying this, you can cut to the way things are today and how pitchers are coddled and how the differences in the game. We have middle relief, 7th inning. You got bullpen guys that just come in, lefty specialists, and then you get to the setup guy, and then you get to the closer. Whereas Raleigh Fingers in those days, Eckersley in those days, they pitched 3 innings to get it closed.
Yes.
And the number of complete games in the major leagues total doesn't compare to the number of complete games just with those guys on that team back then. So things have changed quite a bit, and baseball has changed. Let me ask you this. What changes do you like in baseball since when you guys were involved? And what changes in baseball, not just with the A's, but overall, what changes in baseball do you dislike the most?
My. How do I keep a balance here?
Pardon me?
I'm thinking, how do I keep it balanced? Okay.
Okay. Well, you don't have to. That's the idea. I'm just asking for you.
Yeah. Oh, positive. Positive.
Yeah. Okay.
I like the middle.
Yeah. Well, it doesn't always have. If you have to think to make it positive, then it's almost a false. If you had a false sense of it all. Just say what's on your mind.
Okay. I like
you're a positive person, but some things just aren't positive.
Well, no, the metal detectors with everyone who walks into the Coliseum that's good. That's good.
Well, it's certainly good for what you would call a peace of mind.
It saves lives. We used to have the call once a week. I'm going to shoot someone at the switchboard, and you get to where you hear it so often you think it'll happen, but then you wonder, what's to stop someone? So that's a good thing.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Okay. But I meant okay.
Okay. That was the first thing that came to mind. And for negative, what we talked about with the pitching, I do not understand why they're so coddled. I've even had retired MLB players complain about this, and we don't understand why they're coddled. Someone also sent me an article where they're thinking of having minor league players have substantial salaries.
Well,
I don't know. Someone has to start at the bottom, and anyway, that's a separate issue. But with the coddling, I see that. I see it seems forced. Also, when the players talk about, sometimes I read comments and statements in the paper, and it just seems forced because there's really not much you can say. Now, I guess there's a limit. everything is through a spokesperson. But back to the game, the actual game, I don't understand why players don't just get out there and play to their limit. I don't understand that.
Yeah, well, let me ask you, too, from last week I took a few notes of the things we didn't cover. We briefly talked about a mutual friend of ours, Sid Thrift, the late
Yes.
Sid Thrift, who was an innovator like Charlie in the sense that Sid came up with the Baseball Academy in Kansas City. And
really? When did he do that?
Yeah, he developed, I can't think of his first name, a second baseman, White, was the most...
White. His name was Whitey? Whitey Herzog?
As a black guy. I don't think they called him Whitey.
Oh, okay. Oh.
But,
well,
anyway, a second baseman for Kansas City that he developed. In any event, Sid was a marvelous guy.
Yes.
I got to know him with my minor league gig, and Sid was because he's no longer with us, the dad of Jim Thrift, who grew up out here in Oakland when Sid was out here, and went on to be first a minor league player, a coach, a scout, a manager, a lifer in baseball, second generation scout, he calls himself.
Wow, I would really love to talk to him, because when I moved out here and Mr. and Mrs. Thrift, they were on the 17th floor of our building, and they had Dad and myself down for dinner and to watch the Miss America pageant on TV. I have to tell you, I used to think that was a sport, because the men in my family were so excited when that pageant would come on, and we would bet pennies on which state would win. And looking back, I remember none of the women in the family seemed excited to watch this. So, but Dad wanted me to go watch this with them, and I remember they had a poodle named Jacques. And I played with that dog, and they gave me my first job. It was to take Jacques downstairs and walk him across the street and give him a little exercise and bring him back. So
nice.
that's how actually I got in the elevator with Huey Newton and two of his friends on the way back up. But I didn't know who it was at that time. But they were very nice. So, but Mr. and Mrs.
So on ice.
Yes, and I don't remember if they had their son and if he was living with them at the time, but he might have been. I remember that's when Mr. Thrift worked in our front office.
Yeah, well, I'm sure he was. Jim Thrift was, because he talks about those days. I had him on the show, and we renewed acquaintances. I signed Jim Thrift to his Topps contract.
Really?
Back when he was playing with Medford in the A's organization.
Mm-hmm.
And I gave him a $5 check and obligated him to Topps and Topps to him. When and if he made the big leagues, he didn't, but he remembers the interaction, and I remember spending the weekend with his dad, Sid, and what a great guy.
Yes.
Gregarious, a terrific scout, just great guy.
I'm
glad you have good memories of Sid Thrift, and we'll have Jim on. He can talk, keep up with you, Nancy.
Oh,
thank
you. One thing, I sent you a copy of our 1980 media guide, and on that page, if you look, you'll see Sid Thrift's name with the other team he's at that time, and it shows.
Oh wow, I'd love to have
all these names familiar. You'll see some familiar names with their phone numbers.
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Hey. So we'll have some guests.
Now, with Tops, you had a dream job.
I did. They contracted me every summer from 1983 to 95, the year of the strike, which killed it all.
Mm-hmm.
And
I remember
each
81.
summer I would put the itinerary together to cover teams in the Northwest League, basically the rookie league. It's a kind of a short season A league that starts in June after the draft. So high school and college players coming into the pros, I'd go up to Salem and Medford and Boise and Bend, all up through Washington and Oregon, and do the California League, which was a high A league team as well. And I got to it was a dream job. All my boyhood heroes were coaches and managers in the minors. I'm meeting players that are soon to be superstars. I signed people like Will Clark and Ken Griffey Jr. and countless numbers of others, Robbie Thompson, who comes to mind. And it was pretty cool. They paid my gas mileage and a per diem. And
have you written a book about that?
I'm the kind of guy I'm going to have to learn to read a book before I could write a book. But if you want to write one, we got plenty of fodder. It's not just my life. I've had a very interesting life.
You have.
Aside. So
I remember Dad signing a lot of high schoolers to contracts. Not, most didn't make it, but yes, I remember he could do a contract without Charlie's signature.
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah. So I remember a lot of that, and a lot of that was from the mid '70s because you just never knew.
What made your dad laugh?
Oh, he had the best laugh. Dad. Oh, okay. The Three Stooges. This was Mom. Mom thought that was so. Charlie and Dad would laugh at the Three Stooges. Dad liked when he came home from a long day. He would like to watch Mind Candy shows. That's what I call it.
Right.
And he liked comedy.
Well, are you talking about eye candy or mind candy?
Both. Excuse me, because he would like to watch Charlie's Angels. He tried to get them up here in '76. Wouldn't that have been great?
Yes, of course.
Yes, and then and
they'd always have a place to stay.
That's right. We had
he can invite him tomorrow, and they'd always have a place to stay. Not him, of course.
Right. He took me. I remember when he took me to see the movie Blazing Saddles.
Yes, Mel Brooks.
He liked Mel Brooks, and I would hear him on the phone laughing with people, and he had the best laugh. I felt really good whenever I heard him laugh.
What disappointed your dad?
Something I never wanted to do. Dad never had to spank or anything because I just didn't want to disappoint him. Disappointment if...
Not in you.
If I got in trouble?
No, I don't mean with you, Nancy. I mean,
okay.
What disappointed him about the baseball scene, about dealing with his brother?
How people...
There had to be times they butted heads.
Oh, yes. Charlie procrastinated a lot, and Dad got mad at him a lot. Oh, I always heard Dad mad, wanting Charlie to sign this or that, because people would go into Dad, and that had to do with the payments. Charlie was always waiting to see how far he could take something before paying. and Dad wanted to pay things right away. Dad was the type who'd call me January 1st and say he got his taxes done. I mean, he was on the spot, and Dad could do his own taxes. So Dad was always taking tests in the off season, like he took the broker's exam and passed and then never used it. He just liked to be challenged. So, but Dad would get mad about that, Charlie taking his time to sign a check. So Dad
if your dad had a little more control in the situation, he probably would have paid the annuity payment to to Shunner.
Oh, see, that was, in a way, Dad had to watch it and not show he was in control too much, because if something happened with Charlie, Dad could be taken down financially too, and he knew that. It's his law school, so he had to walk that thin line. And but yes, he was always on Charlie, and I told you he had to quit in order to get Charlie to stop buying other sports teams, because he thought he had the golden finger with winning. So so thank goodness they went back and concentrated on the team. But Dad was disappointed. Dad was very disappointed in people who wanted favors and acted like they were entitled.
Okay.
And people who weren't truthful to him. He was really big on the old-fashioned, tell me what it is.
Hey, it sounds to me like a good Midwestern philosophy and upbringing that you had, and way of looking at life. Had to be a big adjustment coming to California for the whole family.
It was. At least Dad came out first. And
you're also, and this was a time, 1968, the summer of love. That had to be a big change. You as a young woman growing up, all that stuff coming to a new state had to be challenging for everybody concerned.
I was just grateful that Dad came and was a white knight and took me away. It was very strict with Mom, very strict. But we didn't have any. It's funny. I don't remember seeing any of the hippie culture. That Berkeley was still so far away, and I just knew what I knew in the Coliseum and the people who worked for us, the people in our building. And Dad.
Any memories of Hammer himself? MC?
Oh yes, but Hammer didn't come in. I didn't start seeing him until about 75, 76, and he always sat next to my dad. That's what I remember. So I would sit on the other side. As an only child, I wondered what was going on. And so, because Dad is the one who told Charlie about Hammer. Hammer asked Dad if there was anything he could do, and Dad liked how he said, "Sir." So when Charlie came out, Dad took him up and told Hammer he would have Charlie with him and introduced them, and that's how it started. But Hammer helped Dad a lot because he ran around before cell phones. He could run down to another place in the Coliseum for Dad and give someone a message.
Interesting. The Raiders had a guy named who they called Go-Go or something like that. I don't remember his full name. And he did for Al Davis what it sounds to me like Hammer did for your uncle and your dad.
Yes, and then Charlie, I remember when I was in the front office doing something, the game was on, and I heard Hammer's voice on the radio. He was broadcasting an inning, and he was good. I just laughed.
Imagine.
I laughed thinking of him.
He was actually one of the first rappers going. He was a pioneer in that, and Yeah, very bright, had a terrific career. I think he's fallen on some tough times financially, but
he has.
hey,
Yeah.
yeah.
But he handled it very well. You know, that's hey, Mrs. Fields. Her company filed Chapter 11.
Well.
Yeah. So. Her sister worked for us at the switchboard. That's how she. Well, that's how.
Mrs. Fields. So you guys had cookies all the time.
Well, she wasn't really known for cookies then. She would maybe do what everyone else did and, you know, use the recipe. But her friend, when Dad saw her come in to visit her sister, he told Charlie, there must be a job we could create. And so they asked if she had a friend because they like to get people through other people. And the Ball Girl was created.
Oh, so she was the first Ball Girl.
Well, you know, we used a Ball Girl as a test in Kansas City, and I think it was 65, and didn't last very long. No one said anything about it. So we tried it before, but I think in the way we did it with their costume, and you know, it was okay to wear short shorts at that time.
Okay. Hey, we're running short. I just want to kind of have a tease. You sent me an article, a series of articles on Bowie Kuhn, and next time we're going to go over Charlie versus Bowie Kuhn, and we're going to get all of that, stir all of that up, and maybe do a little revisionist history and maybe clear up some of the things that aren't true.
Now, that's all public record, too, by the way. It's all in public record. So it can be, whatever is found can be talked about openly.
Whoa, and if we can, it's going to be very interesting. I read that and my jaw dropped. This was the commissioner of baseball who's in the Hall of Fame.
I know. Morgan said his public record wasn't made public enough. That's how Morgan looks at it. So that's
a very good.
Yep.
Maybe next week Morgan will come and we'll talk about that. So
now, by the way, I'm in Cooperstown next week. Well, Wednesday is my day to present and do a book signing, and then we leave Thursday night. So. Is there?
Okay, well, maybe we could do it Tuesday next week.
Sure. Just
all right, that's good.
Okay.
Bring Morgan on next week for sure. We'll talk about Charlie O versus Bowie Kuhn. Charlie called him the village idiot, and that's a great compliment. Sometimes, not a compliment, but a great distinction. The village idiot, hell, he lived in a big city.
That's right.
There were
he
a lot of
asked for an
idiots
apology.
vying for that job.
Well, Charlie apologized and then said he's the world's idiot.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's a backhanded compliment.
I know.
I would have loved him. More than that, I would have really enjoyed meeting your dad. Your dad seems like kind of guy who did it right in life. Now, you can't say that about many people.
He did. He was the best GM, VP, you name it.
Jack of all trades, a master of most.
Yes. Thank you. Saying he was a GM wouldn't give it justice. Thank you.
Right.
And
saying you're just a podcast hostess doesn't do you justice.
Oh, you're so sweet. I want to hear more about you sometime.
You tell your friends.
Okay.
And I'm going to send you a link to this as soon as I publish it, and feel free to send the link wherever you can.
Thank you.
Tell people how they can get the book.
I will. I will also mention it in Cooperstown.
No, right now, tell people the best way to get the book.
The book is on Amazon,
Okay.
and it's also at Barnes & Noble. I was there last week, and it's on display.
What a thrill that has to be. Have you seen it in a library yet? I've talked to authors about this, and the thrill it must be to see a book that they wrote in a library.
I haven't.
Grow up with.
I haven't yet. Well. I won't. I don't want to look at my book in places because I'm superstitious. Morgan actually went and looked. We were in Barnes & Noble, and I don't. I'm always afraid, I'm going to see it in a place it doesn't belong or something. And so Morgan looked for me, and he said, it's on display.
Now, I'm just curious, where would you think it wouldn't belong in a bookstore?
Oh, maybe
What
someone
section?
would put it somewhere like fantasy or something.
Okay, okay.
Or sci-fi.
Well,
I don't. And I would have to put it back where it belongs. I don't know.
And you'd look over your shoulder to see that nobody's
Yep.
watching you put it back.
Yes.
All right, Nancy, that says it all about you, young lady.
Thank you.
So, get the book. It's called Finley Ball, and
Hi, Nancy.
subtitled, and let's read the subtitle because, as Peter Golenbach says, subtitles are so important. How two outsiders turn the Oakland A's into a dynasty and change the game forever.
Mm-hmm.
I'll say this, it's not the subtitle, but those 5 titles, 3 world championships right in the middle, were the last dynasty baseball has known. And they're not likely to have that repeated for a long, long time, given the way things are and how the teams that finish poorly are awarded in terms of draft choices and this, that, and the other thing.
I know.
So,
Charlie would not. He was so much against being rewarded for not doing a good job.
That was evident. He was not going to change to the way things are.
I don't understand it either. It is hard because of how I was raised to see a reward for not doing a good job. It's just not how I think of things. So maybe that can be a topic.
There's, between labor and management, there are 2 sides. And labor will always think that whatever they're rewarded for an exchange of time is not enough. And management will always think that whatever we pay somebody to do something is too much because we could pay somebody else less.
Mm. So
it's the great divide, and it makes life good theater because, as you know, baseball is a microcosm of life, and you could reverse that and say life's a microcosm of baseball. So it's all interesting, and that's what keeps me alive, just getting up to see how it's going to turn out. And so far, it's not turning out all that well on a lot of different levels, but baseball will always survive. The game itself is too big to die.
It's just too apple pie, it's too ingrained.
Okay. Hey, listen, we'll do it Tuesday right before your trip to the Hall of Fame.
Oh, no,
How
I will
cool
be
is
back.
that?
Oh, wait, Tuesday. Now, I'm getting on the plane Monday night.
Oh, okay.
So
well, then we won't be doing it Tuesday. How about we skip a week and we come back and you tell us how it was, and you can read a composition for us. You can write a composition.
Oh, yes. Oh, my goodness.
My Day in Cooperstown by Nancy Finley.
Yes, and this is when the inductees are coming in. Okay, so the following...
Oh, wow. Very exciting. We'll talk soon, and I thank you in advance for the... for every... You said you sent me something You sent me a 1980 press guide. My God,
And then
I can't wait to see. I can't wait to see that.
And then I was a model for that health club in Alameda. I sent you that.
You did too. I saw the picture, Nancy. My heart. I had to go to the doctor. My heart started beating in such an out of control manner.
I was in college then. Yes, and Dad was.
You can't look at pictures of Nancy. He wrote a prescription saying that.
You're sweet. You're so sweet. I wanted to say, look at those articles I sent too. I tried to cover.
No, I'm too busy looking at the picture of you in the health.
You're too sweet. So
see you next week, Nancy, or the week after. Everybody out there, keep on keeping on. Thanks for listening, and you're fun to talk with, Nancy.
Thank you. So are you.
All right. See you soon.
Okay. Until next time. Okay. Bye-bye.